we are here at Gamescom, and I've just seen the most incredible presentation. It's a game I've been chasing ever since E3. They denied me access to this, and now I'm here, and we're talking about No Man's Sky.
Yes.
Can I just point out, we caught up on Indie Week on Access, right? And we spoke about Joe Danger.
That's right.
And in the end, I was like, what are you guys working on next? And you gave me the most not really anything, we'll see. You're working on No Man's Sky, which is basically just taking everything by storm, and coming out of E3 is what anyone talked about.
Yes,
Thanks for that.
It seems to have gone down well and stuff, so that's cool. People are interested in it.
Very interested in it.
Yeah, it would have been weird if we had been talking about Joe Danger Vita and I'd suddenly started talking about No Man's Sky.
It would have, okay, you can have that.
It would have been awkward, I think. You would have probably thought I was incredibly mental.
Yeah, it's a bit of a jump. But talking about No Man's Sky, let's get started with some things I just want to touch upon that you some of them are just buzzwords, things you said when you were doing the presentation.
Okay.
The first was emotion. You said emotion came first and
right.
kind of gameplay followed after.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of insight into how you guys as Hello Games think?
Okay, yeah.
Or feel, in this case.
Yeah, broad question. Yeah, so when I was saying about emotion, and I know that sounds nonsense and kind of pretentious and things like that, but when you're thinking about a game, you think a game that you want to make, you think about how you want people to feel when you're playing. When they're playing it, when you're playing it, you want... I actually think it's wrong to kind of say, oh, we want this little mechanic, it's going to be a physics puzzle, it's going to have this and this. You actually want, how do people feel?
Yeah.
Are they smiling? Are they, sad? It's going to make them cry or whatever. And more so than that, really specific emotion.
Yeah.
We talked about in the real early days, something that was really important for me, which is this idea of making a sci-fi game.
Yeah, because
right?
you and Rob have an awful lot of the same sci-fi books and stuff in common. He's already said that. He thinks it's very exciting. You read a lot of the same books, so for him it was really exciting to see how those influences became a thing.
I don't think that that's been done that much actually in games. Science fiction is kind of, generally we have future war rather than what I would call sci-fi, And that's something that's really exciting to me in sci-fi. The emotion of sci-fi is when you are flying your ship and you land on a planet and you get out of your ship and no one has ever been there before. And that's the emotion, that kind of exploration, but also just a feeling of a little bit of wonder, a little bit of something that's very hard to describe, which is kind of a feeling this is this is futuristic, I guess. This is alternative. This is something that no one else has ever experienced, and that's what's really exciting. And for us about sci-fi, and that's kind of what we wanted to get across with No Man's Sky. That's everything to us. Right?
Now it's obviously sci-fi, so it's not none of it's real, but instead of going after for a realistic view, graphics, you've gone for this beautiful kind of art style. Are there any influences on that? Or is it just someone with team, that's their artistic styles?
Well, it's a whole load of different things. So for me, when I think of sci-fi, I think of actual fiction, right? Science fiction. So I think of books and I think of the book covers. I read those books and the book covers was everything to me. That's how I picture it.
They hold certain colours.
Absolutely. And it has that that vibrancy and that excitement, and that is kind of the sci-fi of 60s, 70s actually. My generation actually hasn't had that much growing up. It has had more of the browns and greys and the kind of dystopia and the post-apocalyptic, and we wanted something that was much more vibrant, much more exciting, but also we wanted the game, because the game is all this, it's procedurally generated and it's maths and things like that,
right? I'm going to move on to that in a bit, because I thought that was really cool.
But it creates something, or the aim is to create something that looks like a sci-fi book cover, but also, I guess the kind of way that we've gone about that is Grant, who's our artist, he draws concepts, right? Yeah. And he draws concepts that look like sci-fi, right? And then I'm the boring programmer and I have to make maths that create something that looks like that. And we have this weird relationship where we will argue all the time about it. Because if it was down to me, I would just make something incredibly boring that looks exactly like Earth all the time, right?
And that's why you work as teams, though. And that's why these personalities come in. And I guess in small teams like Hello Games, a single person is able to stand out, where you used to work for Criterion.
Yeah,
that's like 300 people.
Yeah.
How do you take a style and stand out in a studio of 300 people?
Yeah, I think, it's just way more difficult, right? Yeah. And it's just a different way of working. And I was totally cool. I enjoyed my time at EA and stuff like that. But it's...
Tick that box.
Right.
You said that, it's fine now.
Yeah. But it's not what I got into games picturing. And I think, presumably, if you were a kid and you aspire to be a games developer, you don't picture like a massive corporate office filled with
row after row. Right. Yeah, and it really is. If you guys have never seen inside a proper studio, such a big one, it is really hard to digest when you get your head around it. It's heads down, headphones on, because it is just people. It's
I
so
remember
many
walking in and like the artists don't like to have any like natural light because it interferes with how so you walk into this dark room and it's like a battery farm of artists, basically, like hundreds of them.
So we talk about artists. You've already said that you're the maths guy. Now we saw some maths in your presentation. Like we saw it working. Okay. Like we saw some of the dev stuff behind the scenes about how you pull things in, because if it's procedurally generated, and we've kind of gone through this, if you left the planet and wanted to come back, in theory, if it was completely procedure generated, it wouldn't be the same planet twice. But if you go to a planet and come back, it needs to be the same planet. So it's maths in there. Yeah,
this is actually the thing we say. It's not that it's random.
Yeah.
Right. So random would mean that like everything's really chaotic.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a grab bag of every possibility that could ever happen, right? Whereas what we want is something that's procedural. So we create something that has like maths and like formulas, right? And those formulas actually define everything about the universe that we've created. So every leaf of grass, every tree, every mountain, everything, how they're built, the shape they are, where they are, and everything. And actually, none of it's like stored on disk. It's kind of a different way of doing games.
Yeah, it just it doesn't pop in, but it fades in, and it's obviously as you're moving, the world has been built around you. Now you're moving at a lovely pace, and it builds in beautifully. Now we were using the dev camera, so we were going a lot quicker, and you could see it coming in just to show us how it works. But when you're playing it, it just sort of builds up around you. Yeah,
so I guess as gamers, we're all used to like loading times and things like that. So we wanted to get away from all that. We wanted to have.
That just takes you out of the feeling.
Yeah, I think so. But also, normally when you're playing a game, you're stood somewhere, even if you're on an alien planet in a game, and what you're actually seeing is like a skybox. Somebody's painted like a matte painting all around you, and instinctively as a gamer, there's certain doors you can't go into, and that like when you see a mountain, like, oh, I'll never be able to go there or whatever. And for us, we wanted to have everything that you see be actually real. And I know that sounds weird, that like actually when you stood on a planet, if you were to like drop your ship down and you were to walk around that planet, that's something that you can do, and you were to walk for a long time, you would eventually come back.
Because how big are the planets?
And hit your
I couldn't get my head around this. Like, I'm watching you do it and I'm like, so how big is that planet? Like, if I park my ship and I start walking, I'm gonna be like, well, shit, I can't get off this planet because I've just walked 40 minutes this way and I've got to walk 40 minutes back. Is it like how big?
Yeah,
is there a way to
like planet-sized planets.
Like for me to walk around Earth.
So if you, exactly. So if you and I were to decide to even meet on a planet, we would still be. It would be like the two of us dropping down onto Earth. Like there's just incredibly low chance of us bumping into each other, which is probably terrible. It's terrible for like multiplayer and stuff like that.
Because that's gonna be my next one.
Right. Okay.
Right. Just a multiplayer.
Yeah.
Is this, online, offline? Is this going to be like Destiny, where I'm playing and I'm on Old Russia and then Nathan runs past because he's already online, I can see Nathan run past? Or is this still that single player experience, but then data is just fed back online?
We keep saying to people, like, don't think of it as an MMO. Don't think of it as, PvP or whatever, because actually it's just so huge that you're probably not going to bump into anyone. You can.
quite like the sound of that.
Right.
If I'm being quite honest.
You can, right? But the way I think of it conceptually, if you think of like emotion and stuff like that, I always think of like Journey, right? Journey is a game of love, right?
A lot of people watch this right now going,
well, hopefully, I mean, you play Journey and you feel like you're playing it with other people and you're aware that there's other people in the world and things like that, and it's lovely. But actually, you know, you and I don't go and say, let's play Journey together. You know, it's like, let's get 2v2 in Journey or whatever. Like,
that sounds
it's
incredible.
just the Journey deathmatch experience. But like, that's kind of how I want people to think about it, because I don't want them to be disappointed and kind of think, oh, I'm going to play it with all my friends, it's going to be amazing. You know, it is possible, but it's something that it's not core to the game. This is just what we want to do that's different, is have this vast universe, and we want to put people out there and we want to get them exploring it for us, you know, and having adventures in it and kind of having different experiences, and that's what's interesting, you know.
But really quickly, I want to go on some of the gameplay mechanics that you've touched on. So we've talked about the feeling and like the general idea of it, but certain things that you've said, I'm like, right, I want a bit more about that.
Okay.
So first of all, you said the ship you start off in is very poor. You know,
right,
it's not a very great ship. This means you can't like hyper jump.
Yeah.
So obviously this gives you an idea that you're going solar system through solar system, and you know you need a better ship.
Yeah.
So what do you do to get better ships? Because you know you in other games you'd either find them or buy them.
Right. Well, you can buy ships at space stations. And that's kind of, you don't really upgrade ships, you buy them at space stations, and actually you can only buy ships that are docked at a space station.
Okay.
And those ships are actually docked there because they are just on their own flight path, and people are following their own kind of actually like a fractal pattern, more maths, right, around the universe. Yeah, I love it. I'm so proud sometimes of these really boring, minute things. But anyway, the ships are kind of following their own pattern. They're going about their business. If you follow them, you will find that freighters are going on a trade route. Perhaps they go down to a planet. Perhaps they drop other little drop ships down and they go and mine resources and things. So you see them kind of going about their business. This is a universe that's just working, right, around you. You, in turn, choose how to interact with that. Yeah. So you could start off on your planet with your terrible ship, right, which is the worst ship in the universe, which you start out with.
Congratulations, you've got the worst ship in the world.
And you decide that you want to buy a new one and you can't afford it, so you could decide to be kind of very combat driven. So you could go out with your tiny, not very good ship and try and take on some people. It's probably a mistake, but that's something that you could do, right? Yeah, and that is actually a way to earn money, or units as we call them. On planets, you know, you could try and find some resources. You could actually try and explore the planet. You could discover some creatures that have never been discovered before, or what have you. There's also combat on planets, and that's something that we haven't really shown yet, but that is another way. And you choose your route through. So if you want to be more of a trader, then you're going to buy a trader ship, which is effectively a ship with lots of cargo space and things like that. If you want to be a combatant, then, you know, and you're constantly picking fights with people, then you can choose a ship that's got you know, bigger weapons and things like that. And it's not like you're choosing a class in an RPG, but it's a little bit like that. It's a little bit like you were making choices that make, you know, that make sense for the type of game that you want to play and the way you want to play it.
So when you get down on the planets, then I saw you scanning.
Right.
So you can scan for, like, I guess there's different minerals and materials.
Yeah.
And you can just do mining, or you just, like, congratulations, you found them, they're now yours? Or is it a process you go through?
You can do mining. You have various different ways of upgrading. Actually, the kind of, we don't say that you're carrying a weapon around with you. We kind of think of it more like a tricorder or something like that, you know, kind of more sci-fi, right? That, you know, we want something that's kind of futuristic. I was saying, like, so many sci-fi games, you just end up with like a battle rifle or something like that. And I want lasers, and I want, you know, cool tech that like isn't possible now. So that we want you to carry around something like that, and that's how you interact with the world. on the planet, that's how you would scan, actually, and you can upgrade that ability. And that's how you would gather resources, and you would upgrade that ability. But it's also how you would, upgrade in a different way, and perhaps try and be more combat orientated on planets or whatever.
Because when we were down on planets, you were flying along, you were quite close to service, and you had like other ships that you said were sort of like part of like your team. What was that sort of about?
So they were wingmen, and as you fly around the universe and interact with that universe, you're kind of quite a small speck, really.
Yeah, I mean,
actually.
Let's face it, yeah.
But you can choose to interact with that universe in whatever way you want. So if you were constantly attacking a certain race or something like that, then they're going to become your enemies. We don't have a big call out on the HUD or whatever. It just makes sense, right? Yeah. If you're constantly like fighting police and things like that, police ships, then that is a mistake, and they are not going to like you for that. But if you were constantly helping out somebody, then that particular race is going to favor you and might help you out. And that's what those wingmen were. They were helping me out. They were AI, but they kind of are not an ability that I gained, but they were some friends that I gained, and that's the way we want it to feel. And we don't want to actually tell everyone everything that you can do in the game. We want something like that to be something that people just figure out, and there won't be a tutorial on it or whatever. It will just happen, and you'll think, oh, I have been helping those guys, and now they're helping me, and that feels nice when it happens. It feels a little bit real, and it brings you into the world a little bit more.
Right, I'm actually gonna leave it there, because I could probably... Now, we're looking down at the floor, because I've got a notebook here where I've written some things you said, and it starts with, these are the questions, right? It starts with emotions, and the last words are just dogfights.
Right.
But I think you kind of covered that with your wingmen, so I'm not gonna just go dogfights.
What a journey.
This has been hasn't it, a magical journey to emotion to dogfighting, and that's No Man's Sky. Seriously, thank you so much. You're probably one of the most in-demand people at these shows at the moment, and I've managed to snap you at like 7 p.m. at night and made you come and stand outside. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're as excited for No Man's Sky as pretty much everyone at Access is. And stay tuned for your YouTube channel, because we've just got loads more coming up.